Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies, and it's gotten done. Zack Wheeler has signed a record-breaking extension with the Philadelphia Phillies. We're going to break down everything as far as how long it's for, how much money it's for, and what it changes for the Philadelphia Phillies. Also, it is Mailbag Monday. We're going to answer some questions that some listeners asked over the weekend, and we're 24 days away from opening day. Our countdown continues with a guy that I grew up watching way back in the day. We'll discuss it on today's episode of Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm Connor Thomas, your host. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for checking us out. Please make sure, I'll always ask you, rate and review where you're consuming this, if you're consuming in podcast form, and if you're watching on YouTube and haven't subscribed yet, really appreciate everyone who has subscribed and anyone who's going to. It really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. We have some absolutely gigantic Philadelphia Phillies news for you today, as Zack Wheeler has signed an extension. I've told you before, I don't think that this is going to go the way that Aaron Nola's situation went last year, where they couldn't get one done before the season. He goes to free agency. The Phillies ultimately do bring him back, but I had a feeling, and I had been hearing some whispers, that this was going to be different with Zack Wheeler, and indeed it was. Now, Wheeler was under contract already through this coming season. He was set to be a free agent at the end of the 2024 season, so the extension does not begin until 2025. But today, he and the Phillies agreed to a 3-year, $126 million extension. That's going to keep him here through the 2027 season. So 25, 26, and 27, which, man, those years don't even feel real. But yes, those are the years that Zack Wheeler's extension will cover. And this is, first of all, before we get into the numbers, the financials, what it changes, it's an awesome decision by the Philadelphia Phillies. Zack Wheeler has been absolutely outstanding for the Phillies since coming here. There have been a lot of people posting stuff about this, matching Zack Wheeler's numbers with the Philadelphia Phillies to Roy Halladay's numbers with the Philadelphia Phillies. And my goodness, Zack Wheeler, you could argue, has been better than what Roy Halladay was in his first couple of years here with Philadelphia, or really even his whole time here in Philadelphia. Now, you got to understand that Wheeler's going to have a couple more years, and Roy Halladay had a storied career before with the Blue Jays before even coming here. But here are just some of the numbers between Zack Wheeler and Roy Halladay and what Zack Wheeler leads in. I mean, Zack Wheeler's been better in WAR. He's been better in ERA. He's been better in ERA plus. Strikeouts, he has more. K percentage is higher. He's had less walks. The only things, and mind you, this is in less games than Roy Halladay, less games started, less innings pitched. The win-loss record for Roy Halladay was better. Now, remember, Zack Wheeler's first couple years with the team, you weren't really looking at as competitive of a team as what Roy Halladay joined. And Roy Halladay was part of like those juggernaut 2010s Phillies teams. So he had a little bit of a benefit with that. Trust me, Roy Halladay is my favorite player. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But Zack Wheeler in less time has arguably accomplished more besides what you're looking at as far as the accolades. Roy won a Cy Young here. Zack Wheeler yet to do so, but he does have a Gold Glove, which Doc never did. One-time All-Star for Wheeler, 2 times All-Star for Roy Halladay, and, of course, Roy Halladay, a Hall of Famer. Is Zack Wheeler heading there one day? Well, he could be. But on top of those numbers in comparison to Roy Halladay, Zack Wheeler is also the all-time Major League Baseball leader in WHIP in the postseason. WHIP, walks and hits in innings pitched. I think WHIP is more important than ERA or strikeout percentage or walk percentage or anything. I think WHIP is the truest definition of what makes you a good pitcher. And the fact that he is the best in postseason history in that stat, well, tells you that for my money, he's probably the best postseason pitcher to this point. And that's 4 pitchers with 40-plus innings pitched. It's better than Mariano Rivera. It's better than Sandy Koufax. Anyone you think of as a great postseason performer, Zack Wheeler is better in whip. So the Phillies are getting a great pitcher for 3 more years. It's also important that through 2027, Aaron Nola and Zack Wheeler are both going to be here. So you have your 2 aces locked up for the next 4 years. That is great. So I couldn't be happier that Zack Wheeler's back. And also the fact that he wanted to pitch in Philadelphia. He said that in the press conference today. Like, he wants to be here. He's a creature of comfort. He likes being at a place he feels comfortable with, a team he feels comfortable on, and Philadelphia is that team. Shout out to the New York Mets for not wanting to pay him. Proud of you guys up there. Anyway, had to take a shot at the Mets. Anyway, but Zack Wheeler could have tested free agency and gotten more money than this. He's also leaving money on the table. He joins a bunch of people who have left money on the table to come back to the Philadelphia Phillies. Aaron Nola, Trey Turner. I mean, Bryce Harper signing as long of a contract as he did, was leaving money on the table for future potential acquisitions. People want to play in Philadelphia. Great players want to play in Philadelphia. So that's all good. But here's where it gets interesting, right? So Zack Wheeler's extension is setting him up to make $42 million per year. That is the highest annual value of a contract extension in Major League Baseball history. There have been bigger AAVs on contracts signed, but not extensions of pre-existing contracts. So that's as big of a commitment as you can make extending a player. Hey, we're going to pay you more money than anyone who's ever gotten a contract extension in this sport before. That's financial commitment, even if it's less than what he probably could have gotten on the open market. That shows that the Phillies are negotiating in good faith with Zack Wheeler. But this is where it gets interesting. Because when Wheeler's extension kicks in, not this year, right? This year, he's still under his old contract. It'll kick in 2025. The Phillies are going to be almost undoubtedly in the highest luxury tax threshold. They're going to be really, really tight in the margins when it comes to how to build the rest of the roster. And you're looking at the constraints financially on this organization getting tougher and tougher. Dave Dombrowski talked about it today when talking about Zack Wheeler's extension, and talked about how this changes some things in the future for the Philadelphia Phillies and their ability to build the team. You know what that says to me? They're trying to win now, and they're committing a whole boatload of money to do it. Like, that should make you feel good as a Phillies fan. There is an opportunity here. The Phillies are chasing it down, and John Middleton is putting his money where his mouth is. I love that from the franchise. I love that from Dave Dombrowski. I love that Zack Wheeler wants to be a part of it. And something else that's important to remember too, we found out something today by that Zack Wheeler extension, the window for the Philadelphia Phillies. Zack Wheeler was going to be easily the highest profile free agent the Phillies had, possibly the highest profile free agent in all of baseball. He was going to be the best pitching option in free agency after the 2024 season. He doesn't get there. So now, looking at what the Philadelphia Phillies have, they only have a handful of guys, not even a handful. A handful would be 5. They have 3 guys that are free agents after 2024. Matt Strahm. I like Matt Strahm. He's a bullpen piece. He's versatile. He's not exactly, all due respect, the difference between like winning or losing a World Series. Like, I like Matt Strahm here. I think he's a good pitcher. He's not Zack Wheeler. Seranthony Dominguez. Contract year for Dominguez. Maybe he gives you a really good year. Maybe you can get him on another deal coming back, but another bullpen arm. You're always going to be looking for bullpen arms anyway. And Whit Merrifield, who you just signed this offseason. And the Phillies have club options on Seranthony Dominguez and Whit Merrifield. So you actually don't even have to worry about trying to come to a contract agreement with Dominguez if he pitches well, or Merrifield if he plays well. You can just exercise those club options, and then the only free agent that you technically have just unrestricted is Matt Strahm after this year. So what does that say? You're going to be financially restricted in 2026, really, or 2025 offseason. And that means that the Phillies are going all in on the next 2 years. That's their championship contention window. 2024, 2025. These are the 2 years of maximum championship contention for the Philadelphia Phillies. We have reached the peak of this like Bryce Harper upslope, right? When Bryce Harper came here, we wondered, okay, over that length of the contract, how long are the Phillies going to have to compete? First couple of years, they weren't competitive. Obviously, they have been the last two. Now it seems that the Phillies are pushing all their chips into the middle of the table for this year and next year. They can bring basically the same team back without any additional financial commitment now. And when you look at that, you say, okay, but the year after, you're going to have a lot of money to pay. There are guys that are free agents. Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto will be free agents after the 2025 season. Those are both big money guys. You're going to have to look at filling in for them. Who knows what's going to happen with trades and things of that nature. So we'll talk more in other episodes of this podcast about what this changes in the Phillies' money situation. That'll be a conversation more for a different day. But just keep in mind, 2024, this coming year, they're set. They're competitive. They're looking for a championship. 2025, they can basically bring back the same roster for nothing and add to it if they'd like to. They're going to be high up in the luxury tax threshold, but still, you basically have the same team locked in for the next 2 years, which is a great thing considering the strength of this roster. The Philadelphia Phillies are in an amazing spot because of this extension, but it also means that these next 2 seasons become incredibly important for them to find a way to a ring. That's it, right? These are the best 2 chances you're going to have at winning a World Series for God knows how long. Little bit of pressure added, right? When you think about it that way. But the Zack Wheeler extension had to get done. The deal was awesome. I couldn't be happier with the financials of it, with the decision by the Phillies to get this done before the season, all of this stuff. It's great work by the Philadelphia Phillies. It's great. I don't want to say great work, but it's a really, I think, smart decision for Zack Wheeler as an individual, but also like a team-friendly, city-friendly decision by Zack Wheeler to come to terms on this extension. Like I feel really good about every last bit of this. So huge Phillies news. As a Phillies fan out there, you should feel awesome about this as well. Coming up on the other side, and we're going to continue in future episodes as this week continues to break down more that we hear about on the Zack Wheeler extension and thoughts on it and everything. Plenty more people will have think pieces come out and articles I'll read. So this will not be the last time we talk about Zack Wheeler's record-breaking extension, but I couldn't be happier right now. And as a Phillies fan, this should be just another in a long list of reasons you should have to believe in this organization's commitment to winning. That's what's important. Not every baseball organization does that. The Philadelphia Phillies, you could say a lot of things about them. One thing you can't say about them right now is they are not trying their best to win. And that, as fans, is honestly all we can ask for from ownership and the front office. Now, it's on the players to go ahead and deliver. And we get to find that out in 24 days when opening day is scheduled against the Atlanta Braves. But yes, we're going to answer some questions from the fan base coming up. Now, these questions were prior to the Zack Wheeler extension, so we'll have a little bit of a grab bag of stuff going on down in spring training as that's still ongoing. And yeah, it'll be fun to hear from some of the folks and what they want to ask me. We'll get into that next as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, let me tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams. The Sixers had a nice win yesterday on Sunday afternoon against the Dallas Mavericks. Could have gotten good money on that. Dallas is probably the better team on paper with Embiid out, but the Sixers, they found a way to get it done. It's that easy. You make a $5 bet on something like that, or an over-under on a player's points, the total number of points scored in a game. You get it right, you get $150 in bonus bets. And there's a billion different type of bets on FanDuel you can use. Live same-game parlays, exclusive props that are only available on FanDuel, quick bets that make you have to think a little bit less hard about the bets you want to make, and all your typical over-unders, money line, futures, spread, all that great stuff. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Let's get into Mailbag Monday. Now, I got to go through my mentions because I've got a billion. It was a big day in Philadelphia sports news as, oh man, Jason Kelce announces his retirement. Zack Wheeler extension is announced. My Twitter has been absolutely flooded. So let me go back and find the people who responded to the tweet for solicitation for questions. By the way, if you ever want to get your question in for Mailbag Monday, you could just find LO_Phillies on Twitter. That's our Locked On Phillies main account. And I'll put out a tweet every either Friday night or Saturday during the day. And you'll be able to respond to that with questions. I try to get to all of them. So let's start with a question from AJ at AJT461. AJ asks, do you think the Phillies playing the Braves on day one at home would jumpstart their motivation for a good April with that playoff-like environment? And I hate to be the you're looking too much into this guy. I like fun. I like believing something great's going to happen because of things. But honestly, it doesn't matter who the Philadelphia Phillies are playing first. They're playing the Braves in their opening series and the opening day at Citizens Bank Park. Now, that series will be electric. That's going to be awesome to watch. I'm also interested if Wheeler or Nola gets the ball first. I imagine it'll be Nola, but I think it'll be a great game opening day. I think it'll be a great series. If the Phillies do beat the Braves, you'll get a bunch of people jumping on the narrative, probably myself included. Is this the year the Phillies knock the Braves off the throne of the NL East, at least in the regular season? The Phillies have already knocked them off their throne 2 years in a row in the postseason, but I don't think 3 games anyway are going to jumpstart the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, here's what I will say. The year before, 2 years before, when Joe Girardi began as the manager of this team and Rob Thompson took over midseason, I'm going to put that kind of on the manager losing the team. It was very clear that the Philadelphia Phillies needed to make a change at the manager position. They had a slow start. I put a lot of that on Joe Girardi because Rob Thompson seemed to fix everything from the second he took over. So 1 year, the slow start I'll put on Joe Girardi. Last year, the slow start, you could put on a couple things. The World Baseball Classic made it a super weird schedule for a lot of high-profile players, including JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, guys that the Phillies really needed. On top of that, Ranger Suarez, in workouts for the World Baseball Classic, had an issue with his forearm, had forearm tightness, ended up missing the first month of the season. That hurts you when you don't have one of your starting pitchers. Rhys Hoskins blew out his ACL in spring training, and Bryce Harper was just coming back. Well, he didn't even come back yet at the start of Tommy John surgery. And even the first month he was back, he wasn't totally himself yet. Oh, yeah, did I forget to mention? Trey Turner absolutely forgot how to play baseball for 3 months of the season. All of that happened last year. The Phillies still won 90 games, and they started slow. I just think the Phillies have had a couple unlucky starts to the season. I don't think you'll see a slow start this year from the Phillies. I don't think it has anything to do with them playing the Braves, though. So great question there from AJ on Twitter. Another one from our buddy Sean Fitzpatrick, who asks a lot of questions, a regular here on Mailbag Monday. Do you feel like Jake Cave or David Dahl have the inside track on the final bench spot simply because they hit left-handed? Or is that not as big of an issue for the Philadelphia Phillies? Well, let's go through and let's think about the handedness of players available, right? So in the outfield, you have Brandon Marsh as a lefty. Center field, Rojas is a righty. Right field, Nick Castellanos is a righty. Whit Merrifield off the bench is a righty. So Merrifield is kind of the natural replacement for Brandon Marsh out there in the outfield if he struggles against lefties. You have Kyle Schwarber as a lefty who can play in the outfield. So right now we have 2 left-handed outfielders and 3 right-handed outfielders. Would another left-hander keep the balance? Sure. But I don't think you are going to put Jake Cave or David Dahl on the team just because the handedness they bat with. In fact, we're going to talk in an episode later this week about the spring that Christian Pache has been having and whether or not he's making a push for a position on this roster or maybe even more than that. I don't know. Rojas has stumbled a little bit. Pache's looking good. Jake Cave and David Dahl are not high ceiling players, I don't think. Could they make this roster? Sure. But are they as high of a ceiling of players as Rojas or Pache? I don't think so. And Merrifield was an all-star last year. He's 100% going to be on the team. I don't think that Jake Cave or David Dahl have the inside track on the final bench spot. Right now, I would say that goes to Christian Pache. Just one man's opinion, but a great question, as always, from Sean Fitzpatrick there on Twitter as well. If you want to jump in on Mailbag Monday, again, just have to respond to the tweet. And I'll also retweet it from my personal account at ConnorThomas975 on Twitter. We'll put it out on either Friday night or Saturday during the day, and I'll try to get to all those questions. But another fun Mailbag Monday, a little bit shortened because of the Zack Wheeler extension news. Coming up, we got to continue our opening day countdown. We have 24 days till the Phillies take on the Braves, like we were just talking about that series. And who is the best Philly to ever wear number 24? I can remember watching this guy growing up, and he's part of some of my earliest baseball memories. I'll tell you who it is coming up next as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. Let me tell you about GameTime, though. GameTime is awesome. You should not have to worry about buying tickets to an event, right? You want to go to a big event like a concert, a comedy show, some theater, well, of course, sports games. Come on, who are we kidding? We're all sports fans, right? That's why you like Locked On Phillies. Well, that's why you're going to love GameTime. GameTime has killer last-minute deals on tickets to the biggest event, great prices. You can see the views from your seat. They got everything. Listen to some of this stuff, right? You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the event. The all-in prices show you your total up front, so you're not going to get surprised by all these random fees at the end. You can buy tickets in seconds, just a couple of taps, and you've got your tickets to the event. And GameTime has special deals. They got deals on tickets right up to when the game starts and even to an hour past the start of the game. You've also got exclusive flash deals, zone deals, which means you pick the section and they'll pick the row and seat, and you can get even greater deals on that. And the GameTime guarantee means you're always going to get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime's going to give you not just 100% of the difference, 110% of the difference. They're great. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code locked on. When you create an account, you just redeem that code. You'll get $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're getting lower down into the numbers on our opening day countdown. And that means normally some higher profile players. How often is it that you see a great baseball player wearing the number like 73? But as you get down into the 20s, you get more players that were big time. We've already had a handful of Hall of Famers and legends on this list. 24 is kind of an interesting, weaker number when it comes to the quality of players. Last year, Derek Hall wore 24 for the Major League club. Roman Quinn was the one to wear it before that from 2016 to 2022. 6 years, Roman Quinn had number 24 locked down for the Philadelphia Phillies. Who could forget Grady Sizemore wearing it for a couple years in the mid-2010s? And you go back a couple years, and there are some guys back in the day that wore the number as well. Milt Thompson, 86 to 88, wore number 24. I mean, you go back, and there aren't really big names back from way back when, the 70s, 80s. I know I've had people commenting, show some more respect to the older players. I try to. When there's a great player from back in the day, maybe one that I didn't watch that deserves to be on this list, I try and put him on here. But 24, I think there's a clear option, and he's the catcher that really started the chain of really good catchers that I got a chance to watch in my life. Currently, it's JT Realmuto. Before JT Realmuto, now there was a little gap in there, but before JT Realmuto, it was Chooch, Carlos Ruiz. And before Carlos Ruiz, it was this guy, Mike Lieberthal. Mike Lieberthal has caught the most games in Philadelphia Phillies history. He was a guy that I remember watching growing up as like a little kid. Now, Lieberthal wore the number from 1994 to 2006. 12 years with the Philadelphia Phillies in the number 24 jersey. That's how he caught so many games. I remember watching him at the Vet, and I'm pretty sure he was the starting catcher in the first baseball game that I ever went to. And then, of course, he stayed on for a little bit of time as well, but see some time at Citizens Bank Park. When that park opened, they transitioned over. Lieberthal was a guy that was a name that I always remember from my childhood. Even if I don't totally remember because I was young, watching him play, I remember bits and pieces. And a great catcher in Phillies history, one of the best, wore number 24. He's the pick. So 24 days until opening day, folks. We're getting close, and I just can't wait until this team takes the field. It's been all good news for the Philadelphia Phillies so far in spring training, and I feel great about where this team is heading. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. So thank you so much for checking us out. Really appreciate it. Again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And please make sure, like I said, you're rating, reviewing wherever you consume your podcasts, subscribing to the YouTube. That's the best way to help us out if you enjoy our content here on Locked On Phillies. And more than anything, I'm just happy you tuned in, took the time to watch or listen today. So I appreciate that. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.